raise a hallelujah louder than
Port City. We are going to continue discussing hopefully every aspect of this predicament we find ourselves in approximately 18 months, 19 months after this whole craziness began, trying to make sense of it all, recommending prevention, treatment, and as my newly recorded intro said, don't change anything. Your doctor, I don't have insurance for this, folks. So, don't go changing your meds or do this. Please if you can, trust your doctor. If you can't trust your doctor, find a new one. It's kind of interesting. I've heard the term, as many of us have recently, going down a rabbit hole. And I always thought that kind of meant you're wasting your time. But when I looked into that expression, it says to enter into a situation or begin a process or journey that is particularly strange, problematic, difficult, complex, or chaotic, especially one that becomes increasingly so as it develops or unfolds. And you can check. That's where we are. We are going down a rabbit hole. And it is getting more chaotic, problematic. I'm seeing some glimmers of hope here and there. And again, as this show is aptly named Recovering Hope, we are trying to share that hope with you in various manners. And we have a new term. It's called Get FACTcinated. I wish I could take credit for that, but Joe just told me I could get sued if I do. So that was stolen from Del Bigtree. Get FACTcinated, folks. I think I'm allowed to say that word. They won't, delete that for me. But that is very, very important. Be informed. To anyone that's been paying attention to this so-called pandemic since it's begun, you have to sense there's something very wrong. And as I have said frequently lately, something very sinister. I think Libby, my guest here this evening, Libby Dunn, has done a great job in putting together a brief description of what has happened with this thing since it began and where we are today. After she shares that, we'll do our best on what we can or should do to remain healthy individually, as a community, and nationally. Welcome to the program, Libby.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I saw something in some of the notes that you shared with me this morning on sort of, your perspective. And it might have been what caused you to run for county commissioner. Okay, that's just been announced, folks. I knew some of you may have known that. And I don't remember if it was the notes you saw or if that's on your website. You kind of gave a very interesting and accurate beginning of this, where they said, okay, we're going to lock down for 15 days. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you wrote? I don't know, you can probably do that, whether you read it or just from your heart. Share that with us if you would.
Okay, yeah. So my journey into all of this kind of started in March of 2020. Unfortunately, I lost my mother-in-law March 4th, 2020 to cancer.
That's right.
And
yeah.
I had been down with her, fortunately, for 2 weeks prior to her passing. And so we were able to spend the last 2 weeks with her. And then we were able to have a proper funeral for her as well. Mm-hmm. And then we were there all in all about a month. And
where was she?
In Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And then we came back to Wilmington. I went back to work and immediately came back to the great toilet paper crisis of 2020.
Yeah, there you go.
And, that was the furthest thing from my mind at the time. And then there was St. Patrick's Day that came up. And so I was ready to celebrate life and, get back together with my friends. Mm-hmm. But that was the day everything shut down in Wilmington.
Oh, wow.
And I invited people over to my house to get together. And I said, hey, entry fee is a roll of toilet paper.
Oh, yeah.
And
some people didn't like that.
Yeah, so it was a group thread that I had for my New Year's party. And so close friends that I typically would have over at my house. And some of them just, I guess, gripped by fear, were very nasty and were like, you are a murderer. How dare you?
Gosh.
You're being so selfish. And I was like, what in the world?
Wow.
What's going on? So, yeah, that was part of my journey into it. And then I was forced to work from home and kind of the president announced this 15 days to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
And I am an engineer at Corning. And an engineer, researcher. I ask a lot of questions. It's kind of my nature. And so I started researching immediately on everything I could find about this, like a lot of people probably did. But I was looking on the CDC's website, and the CDC had guidelines about when they recommended quarantining.
Right.
And it was all based on community spread. Like, they never recommended the entire nation shut down. And so I was, posting that on Facebook and saying, like, hey, guys, we're not following CDC recommendations. And again, there was just a lot of hatred coming at me because it was like, no, we got to follow what the media says.
Yeah, because everybody's so scared. And they still are. You and I spoke the other day about, the division. I mean, this country had been and still is very divided.
Right.
Like no other time in my lifetime, and I'm an old man. But now with what you are doing or not doing to combat the Wuhan flu, it separates people even more. So one of the things that Libby and I spoke about the other day is how can we change that paradigm? How can we bring people together, regardless of what you're doing? We are here, I am here, and Libby's joining me here to do our best to let you know there are alternatives that you really don't hear in any broadcast fashion that I know of, other than some individual, people like myself that are doing podcasts, broadcasts, whatever you want to call them. But in the mainstream media, all you hear about is unsocial distancing, masking, and getting a shot. There's so much more that can be done preventatively. And so please continue your experience there after the bring a roll of toilet paper, which you might start having to do again, I'm afraid.
Right. Yeah. So I, started doing research and posting it on Facebook, and immediately got caught by the Facebook censorship police. And another thing that I had happen to me was in January of 2020. I made it my New Year's resolution to study about dictators. I have never been interested in that before. I'm an engineer. I was naturally good at science and math. And my dad had posted something on Facebook about these dictators that had murdered millions of people, and I'd never heard of half of them. And so it just struck me as, all right, Libby, if you're an educated person, you can't just be ignorant about history. And, they say those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And so I had been listening to these podcasts on dictators and learning about them. And then again, in light of the censorship that was happening and all of the lockdowns and the tyranny and stuff that I was seeing around me, it definitely seemed like history repeating itself. And so I was posting that on Facebook. And again,
what one of the quotes from Hitler, or are you getting to that?
Yeah. So one of his was, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. And I was thrown into Facebook jail and was not, they said I was not allowed to post that. Wow. And then there was another one that said, I use emotion for the many and reserve reason for the few. And that was actually a previous Facebook post that I guess their Facebook people went back in time and found that. And then,
how do they have time to look at all these posts? That's what I'd like to know.
I have a friend who works at Facebook, actually, and she says they have really ramped up their
surveillance, so to speak.
They've hired a lot of people to look into it. And then, of course, they have algorithms and stuff as well.
Right. Man, oh man. and something I think one of those lies that repeated. Russian collusion, was it, that we heard a few times?
Right.
Yeah, it started in 2016. Craziness. So it went on from there. There's more.
Yeah, so they, Facebook shut down one account, and then I opened up another account, and that account actually got shut down within 24 hours, and then they investigated it. They opened it back up briefly, and then shut it down again 2 days later. And then I opened up a third account. And so I was like, they tried to silence me, but they only made me louder.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm afraid might happen. Not on this station, but the other platforms that we're on. A couple of weeks ago, a YouTube episode was taken down because I may have said the C word or the B word. So yeah, we probably shouldn't say them. But what was it that was so bad the second and third time that they shut you down? There probably wasn't anything about this Wuhan flu yet, right? Because I hadn't gotten that bad in the spring of 20. Do you remember what it was, or do you care not to say?
They were all related to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then in May, when the George Floyd trials accident happened,
right,
and then BLM rose on the scene, I was heartbroken to see the riots and everything associated with that as well. And so I was trying to speak out about that as well and give another perspective on that. And so I started getting a lot of hate surrounding that as well.
Wow.
And then that was really kind of the catalyst that I felt like God gave me this idea of unity and diversity is God's great plan. Like in John 17, Jesus prayed for all believers. He said, not just those that hear me right now, but those in the future, that they may be one, even as he and the Father are one. And so it's like Jesus prayed for us here today to be unified.
That's right.
And he says it's by that people will know the love that the Father has for you. And so that's really kind of drove me into, I guess, my mission and new venture is to try to bring unity in the midst of diversity. And it's not about conformity, like unity because you all have to have the same medical opinion or you have to have the same beliefs. It's in the diversity, right? And he uses the example, too, of a body. And he's like, should the ear say to the eye, like, I'm less valuable because I'm an ear and I have a different function? Yeah. And, there's the hand, the feet, and they all have to work together. Yes. They have different functions. Yep.
And without all of them working together, they can't operate. And it's often a symbolism, if you will, of a church. People have different roles, different things, and as individuals. And you reminded me of one of Jesus's quotes. And I don't think he was talking about the Wuhan flu, but it seems like they have eyes that cannot see and ears that cannot hear.
Right.
Otherwise intelligent people, and I'm not trying to create any disunity here, but I don't understand how, people, and I think I said that in one of my opening statements here, if you've been even vaguely paying attention, you've got to realize something is amiss. Things are not right. And I've seen some posts on Facebook, calling a certain political group stupid. And I said, no, they're not. This is intentional. These mandatory requirements, I'll just use that word, for people, doctors, nurses, military. So what are people doing? They're leaving their jobs. They're leaving their military careers, or even if it's a temporary post. Well, what does that do to us as a nation? It weakens us. It makes our hospitals and other healthcare facilities less able to help. Well, you would kind of think that people that are making those demands know that that's going to be a byproduct of that. So I don't know what the total, the end game is, the end plan, but I do think it's all part of a plan, and it's not a good one.
I agree. And I mean, you have the flag behind you in the studio, and I mean, honestly, the Pledge of Allegiance and the Constitution and all of these documents are becoming so much more meaningful when you're like, wow, it's like one nation under God, indivisible.
Yes.
And it's like they're trying to divide us. You know, you always hear the terms divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And so we can't let that happen. We can't give in to that. And we have to, you know, talk to the people that we have think different to. And you have to listen to scientists and doctors who think different. Like it's part of science is to have these debates and people on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. There was one, well, I won't give any specifics because they might be listening and know who I'm talking about. But I've spoken to a number of doctors recently, and you know, some are just fearing that their licenses will be pulled for doing what they've sworn to do, what they went to school to do. And you know, I don't understand how you know, there are numerous cases. There's one here somewhere in my notes about an actor that was very, very sick and was probably going to die. And he said, I'm not going to die in the hospital. He walked out of the hospital, and I think one of his sons got him ivermectin, and he recovered miraculously. Louis Gossett Jr., that's who it is, walked out of an Atlanta hospital, sick with COVID. I just said it. He reached out to Florida Keys Dr. Bruce Burrows, who would save his life. And it's very sad. You know, one of the last images I saw of my friend Wayne, who died of COVID about 3 weeks ago, was a post that he put on Facebook with him with his oxygen mask on. Just, you almost thought he was going to say something. And I think his message, it was a message, it was silent. And it was like, folks, this is my life, and it's not looking good. He turned the camera around, and he just videotaped the room. And that was the last post that I saw of him.
Wow.
And that man should not have died. I saw his brother today, and it wasn't the time and place to ask him some specifics. But if he had gotten Regeneron when he asked for it, and he did ask for it, he probably would still be here running his businesses and sitting on the other side of the table, as he frequently did here. So, you know, there's just so many like that. And folks, you know, let me just reminding you, I'm speaking with Libby Dunn, very concerned citizen and a member of New Hanover County Concerned Citizens. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And also a candidate for county commissioner. How do people get a better understanding of your views, your what you're standing for, and maybe why you're running? Would you want to share your website or?
Yeah, so I have a website called LibbyForLiberty.com. It's Libby, the number 4, Liberty.com. And I have a resources page on there and a page about fight mandates, which tells you all the different ways that people, concerned citizens in the community, are rallying together and starting grassroots movements in the community, weekly meetings that you can get involved in, and resources just to learn more. Yeah,
and your resource page is very good. I was speaking to her off air before, and it's repeat the website.
So it's LibbyForLiberty.com. It's Libby, the number 4, Liberty.com.
Okay, and some of the resources are about this Wuhan flu. I'll just try to use that term and remember. But it's very good, very, very simple, very nicely laid out. I think you said you did that yourself. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a lot more on there, a lot more to learn. You know, one of the things that we'd like to repeat on this program, since I changed the topic from drug addiction. By the way, folks, you know, if there's anybody listening that has issues with drug addiction and recovery, that was what this program started out to be. I am very resourceful for that information. So if you or someone you know or love is trapped in that battle, please, we'd love to help out there too. You can go to recoveringhope.org and contact me that way, phone numbers, emails, whatever you'd like to do. But one thing that we do like to repeat are some of the preventative measures that have been proven effective for preventing Wuhan, such as simple vitamin regimen. I think I had written some down. Do you have some in front of you there, Libby?
Yep. So vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and quercetin.
Yeah.
Yeah, which helps the zinc get into the cells.
Right. And and then some of the early symptoms. And this is something, too, that Dr. Maglione repeated and others have repeated many times. Fever, sore throat, almost cold-like symptoms, nausea, GI issues, anything your body aches, right? Your body's telling you something's not right. Pay attention to these signs, and don't assume that if you think you have COVID, well, this will be, a light case. Don't ever assume that, especially if you're someone like me and you've got, comorbidities. And there are things that you can do other than the vitamins, depending on your susceptibility. I started taking ivermectin almost 2 weeks ago, I think. Fairly low dosage. You load up a little bit, days 1, 3, and 5, and there are protocols, folks, that you can get to. Frontline Doctors has some great protocols on their websites, but after you load up, it's like sometimes when you take antibiotics, they tell you to take 2 and then take 1, But in this case, it's days 1, 3, and 5. You take a certain dosage depending on your size and weight, and then every 2 weeks you take some. So figured, okay, it's worth the risk with everything else that my wife and I are taking. But don't wait until you get sick, especially if it's just a vitamin regimen. You might not be very susceptible, but you don't want this virus if you can avoid it. So that's one of the main messages that I need to get out there is prevention methods, treatment, and treat it early. And again, Dr. Maglione would say a strong immune system is one of your best friends in this case.
Yeah, and you just said you don't want this virus if you can help it. And I think I heard something the other night that said pretty much everyone's going to get it at some point.
Yeah, that's what my wife thinks too.
Yeah. So it is about building your immune system and taking care of yourself in terms of, exercise, how you eat, vitamins, all of that plays into your health. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely does. And your attitude,
Right.
As one thinketh, so is he. I think that's one of the biblical quotes too. So was Wuhan one of the main reasons when you saw things that were happening and the control, the fear, and all this other nonsense? Is that kind of what catapulted you to decide to go into politics?
It really was. That was probably my number one issue, and number two was all of the racial injustice and division coming through BLM and the Marxism and stuff that I saw coming on. Yeah. And when I looked at the BLM webpage, and they were talking about we're a Marxist organization dedicated to the destruction of the nuclear family. And I was like, what? And I actually recently learned of an organization that is called everyblm.com. And it's like, from the womb to the tomb, that they really do care about Black lives and are doing things to help. And so that's a resource that I would recommend and fully stand behind. It's
Every BLM.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pro-life, pro-America.
Nice. Yes, because there are so many. Unfortunate, I think is it statistically 40% of Black babies are aborted? Is it that many?
Gosh, some of the things I've seen are higher, that it's a higher aborted rate than a birth rate in certain areas of the country.
Wow. Yeah, and then you can look into the founders of Planned Parenthood and that wickedness, that wickedness that exists that we would like to believe doesn't.
Right.
But it does. And I think, I actually hope I'm wrong, but I think it's that level of wickedness that is behind this whole plan, it seems. Last week I was quoting Dr. Peter McCullough, and I kind of got off my, I was in a rush last week when I was talking about these things. Let's see, did I not print that one out? But Dr. McCullough has some amazing credentials. I think I have it here in my computer. But he's talking about, this isn't just a virus that got out. I mean, it's all part of a rather sinister plan. He's talking bioterrorism. I don't know that I agree with him. I haven't done enough research to agree or deny. And I can't find that. I hate when that happens, especially when I'm on the air. But he went into some detail about the the alleged shot that is like part 2 or plan B of this whole bioterrorism thing. And that's kind of crazy, but he's got some of the most incredible credentials of anybody in this fight. Doesn't mean he's right all the time,
right?
But that's some scary stuff. It's not only the economic damage, the fear that is instilled in just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went to a hardware store yesterday. I've known this woman behind the counter for years, sweet Christian woman. We always chit-chat a little bit, but I left my mask in the truck. Mark, you got to go over there and get a mask. So I went over there, I'm looking, and they had rags that you would have to tie a bandana to. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And I went back to the cashier after getting another piece of hardware, and so you're not going to put a mask on? I said, no, I'm not. I'm sorry, but I'm not. Okay, well, if you come back, we're not going to take care of you without. She's so scared. She's just scared. She said, I have to be here 8 hours a day dealing with the public. And I said, that must be tough. I said, I'm sorry, and she's got a very tight, firm mask on, which if they do anything, the little paper diapers that most people wear, they're not doing anything.
Right.
But that's what she wanted. But it's that division. It's like she was angry. I was angry. I hate, and you've probably done this too, for places where you have to wear a mask. You got to go back out to your car, get the mask, and.
Well, there are exemptions allowed.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
In the mask rule, it says that anyone who has medical, exemption, any problems breathing while wearing the mask, or
I do.
I think everyone has a problem breathing when wearing the mask.
Yeah.
And there's also exemption if you're exercising your First Amendment, which is quite broad.
Yeah.
I think I'm always exercising my First Amendment rights.
I thought you were going to say if you're exercising, because I don't go to Planet Fitness anymore because I got to wear this stupid thing. So, and I have heard that you can say, and I've actually said this. I don't think it works so well, but I said I have a medical exemption, because apparently they can't ask you what that is. Do you know? Right,
that's written into the rule. It says that you're asked to be honest, that you have an exemption, but they can't ask you to prove your exemption. However, the business owners still do have the right to ask you to leave.
Right.
And the police say that they won't enforce or penalize you for your exemption, which you're allowed to have. But if a business owner asks you to leave for any reason and you don't leave, then you're trespassing at that point. And so the police will enforce that. However, you then get into potential discrimination because, there is Americans with Disability Act.
Right.
And, you can't tell someone to leave your store just because you don't like them for their race or for their religion.
Right.
And so the businesses are opening themselves up for liability suits and discrimination suits if they don't honor exemptions.
Wow. Yeah. That's nuts. I mean, I want to be respectful. If somebody is that fearful and I'm coming to do business with them, okay, I'll put the thing on. But I also, and this is something else I recommend that you can get, folks, is a nasal spray. I have a nasal spray with oregano oil in it, and according to Dr. Donald Reese, that prevents any virus from being able to get into your mucosa. And if I'm going into a crowded situation, Home Depot, Lowe's, I'll squirt a couple of them up my nose and go in without the mask on, and people say, oh, where's your mask? I'm doing something better than that mask. Do you know what's going on in Australia?
Australia is insane with their total lockdowns, and police have been shooting protesters with rubber bullets.
Okay, don't go too far, because that's my lead into when we come back.
Okay.
We're going to find out the madness in Australia. If you think things are bad here, you ain't seen nothing yet. We'll be right back speaking with Libby Dunn on Recovering Hope. New South Business Brokers. Pete DeVita is the owner and founder of New South Business Brokers. I've known Pete for many years, and I've always admired his business skills. His most recent endeavor is business brokerage. He has the expertise and experience to guide you through this challenging process, whether you're looking to buy or sell a business entity. His website, newsouthbusinessbrokers.com, is clean, informative, and to the point, with a lot of helpful information as well as current businesses for sale. Here's a small sampling of what New South Business Brokers can do for you. Working closely as an experienced team, New South Business Brokers applies their collective expertise on behalf of the business owners to strategically plan, effectively market, and efficiently execute the successful sale of their company. So, if you're in the market to buy or sell a business, this is a great time to call or email Pete DeVita, 910-262-2113, or Pete at newsouthbusinessbrokers.com. Besides my involvement in Prodigal recovery, I'm also in the construction business. I say that to say this. When we have tropical storms or hurricanes, the real hard, difficult, expensive, and dangerous work is usually the result of trees falling on homes or other personal property. Hurricane season is not the only time to get prepared for this. As a matter of fact, it's before and after hurricane season that you need to get prepared. My son Chris started his tree business called Climb Pro Expert Tree Care after Hurricane Florence. Chris has all the equipment and manpower to take on even the most challenging jobs. With over 20 years of combined experience, Climb Pro LLC can safely remove any unwanted hazardous trees from your property. They also offer tree pruning, elevation, dead wood removal, and other expert tree care services. Don't wait until you have a tree emergency. Visit climbpro.com, that's climb with a K. Check them out on Facebook or call Chris Marcley at 910-540-5249. Mention this ad for a 10% discount. And welcome back to Recovering Hope. My name is Mark Marcley, and I'm here with Libby Dunn. And just as a reminder, Libby, this is not the reason she's here. She just happens to be running for county commissioner. And if you'd like to learn more about Libby, you can go to Libby, the number 4, liberty.com. LibbyForLiberty.com. And before the break there, I just wanted to see if you were ready to talk about Australia. And boy, you were ready. So let's share. And you know, we're joking about it, but it sounds like it's insane over there. Tell us what you've learned.
Right. I mean, people are on lockdown and have ankle bracelets in some cases in Sydney, Australia, to where they are not allowed to leave radius like 5 miles from their home.
That's what I've heard too.
They have to wear masks when they're out in the park. I've seen videos of police tackling people to the ground, you know, when they're sitting by themselves on the ground in the park or smoking a cigarette in the park.
Do you have to do that with a mask on? They have masks with holes for your cigarette? Yeah. Don't worry about the Wuhan flu, you know. But yeah, and one of the more serious things that I had heard, as a matter of fact, a mutual friend, Eric Lewandowski, I think he had told me about. And by the way, if you're listening in the Keys, Eric, yeah, I can't say that I'm feeling sorry for you. He was asking me what time the show was. Hope you're having fun down there, buddy. But these Wuhan flu camps, almost said the other word, in Australia. And when I started looking into them, there was a lot on the internet about these camps for people that will not conform, let's just say, to what they want us to do. And they'll put us in these, little communities, just for our safety protection. I mean, if that's not insane. And folks, you might think that I'm going too far, and maybe I am. People call me crazy. They have reasons for that. But I'm just doing the research. Did you read anything about that? Whether it's England, Australia, or the U.S.?
Well, the CDC website has an approach. I believe it's called the shielding approach, where they talk about that as an approach, a potential solution. Yeah, and
I think was that written in like May or July of last year?
I believe so.
I don't know if we saw the same article.
Yeah, it's on the CDC website. And so, it's something they consider. And actually, even in the public health rule that was released in New Hanover County on the mask, the statute that it references in the North Carolina General Statute was written to deal with cases like tuberculosis. If people wouldn't quarantine, then the public health director has the right to force them into a McCain hospital for health for up to 2 years.
Wow, up to 2 years. And of course, and I think, I don't know if I read the whole thing, but, they would have, showers and food and, just make everything nice. But this person that we heard, I think you heard the same video of it from an undertaker it's not the right word, funeral director in England, that they were planning to build and look, folks, I'm not saying this to instill fear in anybody. I'm just sharing, what I have found, and this seemed like a legitimate person. They're saying that they're building a prison that will hold up to 30,000 people, inmates, but he thinks that it's being built for these people that are not conforming. Let's say that they won't get the shot, and you wouldn't even think that this could be even a possible consideration. But then you think back to, who were you quoting before? Adolf, right? And where did these people think they were going? I mean, it was horrible what they did to the Jews and others. And
they convinced the German people that the Jews were disease carriers. That was one of the tactics they used.
Wow. Man, oh man. It's nuts. But, again, folks, let me repeat, we are here to hopefully, to give you hope. And I would say I'll try to find one of my quotes from last. Here it is. Look, I found it. Hope doesn't stop hurt, but it does see us through it. And if I had known when this whole thing began, because we also run a recovery residence for men, so 12-bed home for men, and when this whole thing began, I was really very concerned for the men in this house that, oh my God, it's going to come in the house, it's going to spread, and it's going to, what will these guys do? Where will they go? So we took, every precaution that we knew, with, being very sanitary and, no community towels for the kitchen sink, the bathroom, paper towels everywhere. But if I had known that if these guys just load up, I have since bought everybody vitamins in the house. If they loaded up on that, and then that there was this antidote called ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, I think it seems like ivermectin might be more effective. I don't know for sure. I would have been very relieved to know that. And just about 2 weeks ago, somebody did test positive for COVID. He was able to go back to his parents' house, so that was good. But, I mean, he roomed with another guy. He never got it. Nobody else in the house got it. So I was very happy about that. But folks, that there are anecdotes might be a good word for it, but prevention.
Right.
Like Libby mentioned before, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, quercetin. Quercetin is kind of hard to find. I don't even know what that is. It's not a vitamin. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's kind of hard to get. Quecertin, quercetin. I think that's it. My wife's listening. Mark, you can't spell the singular.
That's not what I would have guessed. So I'm glad you spelled that out.
Yeah, I know. You didn't spell it right in your notes, but that's okay. But it's very effective. And then if you were to get it, you can get ivermectin. There are places available. Your doctor might prescribe it for you. But this is another issue that we have. There are some local doctors that will prescribe it, or even if you go to one of these telemed doctors, and if they prescribe it and they send the prescription to a local pharmacy, most of them won't fill it. And I was astounded when I was told I couldn't get my hydroxychloroquine that was sent to a local pharmacy. And the pharmacist said that they won't fill it because it's prevention. Now, I have later found out, after a discussion with an attorney a couple of weeks ago on the air, that in North Carolina, pharmacists can refuse to fill something. But I would imagine that they can also say, okay, I understand that this could help you. You're concerned. You're 65 years old. You're potentially at risk, higher risk than most people. Okay, we'll give this to you, Mr. Marcley. No, they just refused. And I think it is from above. It's like, this program has been predominantly about drug addiction, and there are people, big pharma, everybody knows that was Purdue, and they were putting this very addictive drug out there that they said was not addictive in 99% of the cases. And so I think that big pharma has a lot to do with this situation that we're in.
Definitely.
Have you looked into that with the pharmacies? And
yeah, it really highlights how just a few people can control. All the doctors are really in that same bucket of submitting to the insurance companies and submitting to the hospital administrators. That the hospital administrators have told doctors that you are not allowed to deviate from the hospital protocol, or we'll fire you.
Right. And again, it's, do they understand the ramifications? All of the people that have died, Dr. McCullough, I found those notes. I think he said well upwards of 50 to maybe 75% of the people that died of the Wuhan flu could have easily survived.
Yeah,
I've
seen it
hundreds,
as high as 90%.
Yeah, I was being kind. Hundreds of thousands of people that did not have to die. Families broken apart. And again, it's a similar thing with drug addiction, that it is a preventable, treatable disease. But the reason that we're talking about COVID, because there I said it again. That's two dings on me. This affects everybody. Drug addiction affects a lot of people, and it's a very horrible disease, and I'm very empathetic to those who are dealing with it. But this really affects everyone. I heard, there's more talk on the news of very young children that they're recommending that they get this shot. When the recovery rate of children, I think statistically, there are 0 deaths for children. So that might be, maybe 1,000 out of tens of millions. So statistically, it's 0.
Right. There's 0 in New Hanover County, and the overall is 99.998% recovery rate.
For children?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And what about for adults? Have you looked into any recent stats on that?
Yep. It's 99.95% for 18 to 65, basically.
Wow.
And then even above 65 is 99.1%. So it's
you just made me feel so much better, because that's my group.
Yeah, it's actually, I got that from the CDC website. Those are the numbers. And that's without the vaccine. Dang it.
Yeah, there
ding
you go.
For me.
Yeah, 1 ding for you, 2 for me. We'll keep score here. Maybe we should touch on VAERS. I don't have in front of me what that stands for. Did you?
That's Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.
Okay. And some of those stats, the first time I looked at that site, and if you go to VAERS.com, I think it is.
That'll get you close enough.
Okay,
it's
right.
Probably
yeah.
not gov.
Google will correct it. But this is from either the CDC or the NIH, National Institute of Health. This is a government site, so it's not like somebody that is against the typical protocols that are being shoved down people's throats or somewhere else. And the amount of illnesses and deaths as a result of this injection are extremely high on what's reported. And what's reported, they say right there on there, is about 1% of what is actually happening, because not everybody reports it.
Right. It takes a long time for doctors to report. And there was a Project Veritas exposed as well, where they were inside a hospital. Someone was doing an undercover reporting, and the doctor said, of course they didn't report it. They're not going to take the time to do that. So that's one issue with it. But it's actually interesting. Have you heard about the FDA when they were reviewing the booster shot and made the recommendation not to get the booster shot? Did you watch any of that?
Yes. And then who's the head of the CDC?
Rochelle Walensky.
Walensky.
Yeah.
Overruled
the
FDA's decision. It was a 16-2 vote not to do the third jab.
Yeah, and then two of the FDA officials, Marion Gruber, director of the FDA's Office of Research and Review, and Deputy Director Phil Krause, both left after that because of how the agency was handling it. So there's people within the FDA, within CDC, within Big Pharma that are scientists that are questioning these things.
Right.
But again, the power that a few have. So there's these top officials at FDA or CDC that are controlling all the science that's coming out of the FDA as well.
Right. Yeah. And is that science? Yeah.
It's
follow the science.
all science is interpreted by scientists or by the people that are paying for the science to be done.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as unbiased science, you know.
Yeah, but I remember, in early school years, when you learned about science and it should be something, an experiment, for example, where you don't look at the results from one experiment. You should get the same results every time you do that experiment.
Right, repeatable.
Right? Yeah, that's science. Don't get me going on evolution. But yeah, it is, and they say follow the science. Well, if we're following the science, and perhaps that is happening more and more. I just heard yesterday morning on this station that the Cape Fear Clinic is offering Regeneron to people without comorbidities, without certain requirements. It had been, I think, up until yesterday, and we have a friend who was really in need of Regeneron, but now the Cape Fear Clinic is going to offer that. And then apparently, as soon as that was let out, if you will, or announced, I should say, then the local hospital, Novant, said, oh, yeah, we'll do that. So I don't know what they're doing. This is fresh off the press just yesterday, and hopefully next week we'll have some more information on that, unless you already did that, because there's no question that I've asked you yet.
Nope, you just did. I don't know much about the Regeneron. I do know a couple other things that I was wanting to get out there for people
please.
To make sure they have in place. And I have links to these on my website as well.
Okay, which is?
LibbyForLiberty.com.
The number
Libby,
4.
The number 4, Liberty.com.
Okay.
Yep. And on the Fight Mandates page, there's information about how you can get prepared. So how you can get those vitamins, telehealth links, and life-saving protocols. But also what we haven't talked about yet is to get an advanced medical directive. An advanced directive or healthcare directive allows a person to plan treatment options and select an agent to make medical decisions on their behalf. So this is used when you're no longer able to make decisions for yourself. So it's really important that you have given that authority and power to your spouse or to a trusted medical friend.
Right.
And there's also the medical power of attorney, which is similar to that. I guess with the advanced medical directive, you can actually specify in there what treatment you want and don't want. So sometimes if you were to sign a hospital's general consent to treat forms, it may contain stuff in the fine print that you don't actually read that you're actually not okay with. And
you shared that the other day.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
tell us about that again.
One instance, I don't know what hospital it was at, but it was, I heard it on the Kate Daly podcast.
Okay.
And she said that she went to the doctor and they
don't use the V word.
Asked her to sign the consent to treat form, and she asked them to print it out. And when she read it, it said, they had authorization if they wanted to give them the shot.
Yeah.
Within the consent to treat that, you just sign on the digital without really reading it.
So
if you have an advanced medical directive that you've given to the hospital and that you've given to your doctor, that can help protect against that.
And I'm sorry, I might have missed what you said. And how do people get these advanced medical directives?
So I have links to those on my website.
There you go. Okay. Libby, the number 4, Liberty.com. It really is a great site, folks. And putting politics aside, just to learn a lot about what is available to prevent and to treat this horrible disease. you know.
And another thing they recommended was if you are facing a mandate from your employer, to give them a notice of liability. And that will actually help the employers as well as they're making this decision. So if you make them sign a notice of liability, then they know that they are liable for anything that happens to you, and that they are facing a potential lawsuit from their employees. And so they have to weigh that risk against the risk of fines that are being imposed on them by the government or whoever's imposing the fines. And so notice of liabilities and like banding together with other employees is important. And then there's also links to exemption forms for medical or religious exemptions.
And this is all at LibbyForLiberty.com.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's again, it's very well put out there and organized and clean, and that's what I think is a good website. You know, we don't get bombarded with all this other distractions, and but it's very good, very well done. And one thing that I see here, which is very true, that you had in your notes, is for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And that is so true, because like I had said earlier, you know, they have eyes that cannot see and ears that cannot hear. It's like, why don't you get it? Where is all this evil coming from? And it just seems, when we know that death is so easily preventable and it's not done, are these people responsible for murder? I mean, I think it was Tony Maglione and others have said, you know, these people should be charged with crimes against humanity.
Right.
Will that ever happen? Probably not. That doesn't bring anybody back, but we can move forward. So kind of like we started out on the program, you know, I would love to know of some ways to unify, you know, and starting locally, regionally, maybe nationally. I don't know. I mean, this program is heard different parts of the country because of Facebook and YouTube. Maybe not YouTube anymore. Maybe not Facebook either. But, you know, we got to do what we can. You know, we're just two people living in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you know, we're concerned citizens. And I think it's very important. Speaking of concerned citizens, are they having a meeting tonight?
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to announce where that is?
It's a Carolina barbecue on College Road. It started at 6:30, but it's usually 6:30 to 8 or so every Wednesday, and it alternates between Carolina barbecue and Churrasco's on Military Cutoff. But their website, you can also find the link from my website. It's probably easier. But theirs is NHCCC. That's 3 C's for New Hanover County Concerned Citizen. .nationbuilder.com.
Okay.
And that group has grown. We just started it when the mask mandate was announced here in New Hanover County. So about a month ago, and it's over 700 members. So you are not alone is the message. Is
well, that's good, because I had been feeling rather alone in this quest. I mean, there are people, you know, that I meet along the way that share the same thing, but I'll tell you, I'm overwhelmed. You know, the amount of paperwork and research, and every day there's something else to research. I mean, I signed up to get emails from Del Bigtree. Is that his real name? and today I got one. I'm like, okay, I got home from work a little early, intentionally on a Wednesday. That's what I do. But there's always something new, and he's got something going on tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And maybe, you know, I can't take the time from work, but let me see if I can find this real quick here. From Mr. Bigtree. He's got something, here it is, tomorrow. If you just go, you know, it's Del, D-E-L, Bigtree, just like it sounds. Misinformation and disinformation about C, V, in general are everywhere, and people are so busy and so distracted. So how do you and I reach them with the facts in a way that's easy to approach, easy to understand, and won't take up a lot of their time? The answer, this is where I got this term, is to get FACTcinated. That's such a great term. I wish I thought of it. But he's got a website called The High Wire. And tomorrow I'm trying to find, okay, here's the link. Sorry, folks, for delaying like this, but it's live radio. That's what happens. Tomorrow from, I think it's, Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's 2 p.m. here. You can watch just news, some current events. And that's what I want, because things change every day. It's like I often quote my late friend, Wayne Ray, who has said, when we talked about the Wuhan flu many months ago, he said, we're flying the plane while we're learning to fly the plane. And that's kind of the way it is. There's new things, and thankfully there are some new good things. And that's one thing that we've been praying for, programs like this, not just this, but, something changed the mind why a local clinic is going to be able to give people Regeneron. And for folks that don't know what that is, I'll describe it the best way that I can. It's an infusion of antibodies that you get from others who have had the Wuhan flu, right? Do you know much about that? Or you're kind of like me with Regeneron? My wife knows more about this stuff, but she wouldn't come in.
I don't know much about it. I think you can get the antibodies through like man-made or like in the lab as well. I don't know that it's necessarily from
somebody that has had it. Okay, but it's very, very effective. Who was that actor I mentioned before? Doesn't matter, but when he got it, actually, no, he got ivermectin, but others have gotten it. My chiropractor had the Wuhan flu, and who's calling me now? Don't they know I'm on the radio? And he got it. He's fine. And he's also an advocate for prevention and treatment. Well, I just got the 2-minute warning. That's what that peace sign was from Joe. Any last things that you would like to say?
Yeah, so a couple of quotes I saw recently was, if you try and lose, then it isn't your fault. But if you don't try and we lose, then it's all your fault. And so the message is just do something. Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Like, you have a brain, you have resources, you have a network that no one else has. Right. And so just do something. Take some time each day to help educate others in the way that you can. But there is a list of actions on my website as well that if you want something to do. Libby4liberty.com, the number 4. And yeah, you were born for such a time as this. So it's no mistake that you're alive and you're here today. So don't waste it, but have hope as well. There is hope. Absolutely. As long as there's breath in your lungs. And that's, what we do here on Recovering Hope. Well, thank you very much, Libby. And next week, we're going to hear from Kathy Lawley. Kathy is a nurse that I was going to interview quite some time ago, but she got COVID. She's got quite a story, too. Libby, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for tuning in. God bless. Good night. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Bringing you the best local talk radio shows, Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM, WFBT, Carolina Beach.